Story time with Miss Jessica. Can you guess what today's story is about? That's right, it's a camel. And there are two kinds of camels. The one-humped camel or dromedary camel that you see in this picture, who lives in northern Africa and the Middle East, and also the Bactrian camel or two-humped camel, who lives in Central Asia. Now, these two camels may look different and live in different places, but they have a lot in common. For instance, camels are very strong. They can carry people and very heavy loads that weigh up to 500 pounds. Wow, a camel is really strong. Also, most camels live in the desert, where it's very hot and very dry, but sometimes you can find camels in cold places too. As we talked about, the desert is hot and dry, so it can be hard for a camel to find food and water. But God made them in such a special way that they could survive this. He gave them a hump to store food and fat for energy, and He gave them a place in their body to store water. In fact, a camel can go 6 whole months without eating any food or drinking any water. That's a really long time without eating or drinking. A camel, when he finds water, can drink up to 30 gallons in 13 minutes. That's about 200 normal-sized water bottles. Could you drink that much water? I don't think I could. God made camels very different and very special from other creatures. And today I want to share with you a story called The Camel. Once upon a time, in faraway northern China, lived a Chinese merchant who traveled about upon a camel. At evening, he would stop and pitch his tent, unroll his blanket, and go to sleep. In the desert, it is very hot in the daytime, but at night, it often grows very cold. One night, it was colder than usual. In fact, it was so cold that the camel, tied outside the tent, began to shiver. As he lay huddled up on the ground, a thought suddenly came to him. Inside the tent, my master is warm and cozy. If I could only push my nose through the tent flap, I would be much warmer. Gradually, his nose goes into the tent. Oh, it is warmer! But how much warmer it would be if my whole head were inside! No sooner had he thought of it than into the tent went his whole head. His master, fast asleep, did not seem to notice his presence. Why not crawl further, he thought. There is plenty of room and he will never know the difference. So the camel began crawling in, inch by inch, first one foot, then the other foot, and before long, not only his nose, his head, his 2 front feet were inside, but also his entire body and his 2 back legs. And still, his master slept on. This is better than sleeping outside, the camel thought to himself. The tent is crowded, but I will just push my master over a little further, and then I will have more room for my long legs. The Chinese merchant did not know what was coming upon him until suddenly he woke up and realized that the camel had taken possession of his tent and was nearly crushing him to death. Many times, boys and girls and grown-ups are just like that Chinese merchant. If we're not careful, things will come into our lives that are much worse than a camel coming into a tent. Sometimes we think that it won't matter if we let just one little bad thought come into our hearts, a little jealousy or a lie. But before we realize it, our hearts are full of all kinds of wicked things. The camel can remind us how sin comes into our lives. A little sin, and then a little more sin, and a little more. But pretty soon, our hearts are full of it. Boys and girls, let's ask Jesus Christ to guard our hearts this week. Let's watch the things we should and say the things we should say to others. Let's not let sin creep up into our hearts like the camel creeped up into the tent. Let's obey the Lord. Let's obey our parents. Let's pray to Jesus and read our Bibles. Boys and girls, I hope you know that I love you, and I can't wait to join you next week for Story Time with Miss Jessica.